A Friday the 13th and Halloween season. Yeah, there was no way I was missing this. Hello everyone, happy Halloween and welcome to another Rewind review. And as you probably guessed based on the day that this video was uploaded, we are taking a look at the original Friday the 13th. Released in 1980, Friday the 13th sees a group of camp counsellors trying to reopen a summer camp called Crystal Lake, which has a grim past. And when they do, they find themselves being stalked by a mysterious killer. Directed by Sean S. Cunningham and written by Victor Miller and Ron Kurz, the first instalment of the Friday the 13th franchise stars Adrian King, Robbie Morgan, Kevin Bacon, Janine Taylor, Betsy Palmer, Harry Crosby, Laurie Bartram, Mark Nelson, Peter Brower and Rex Everhart. Back when this channel started back in 2022, I had a bit of a goal for what this channel was intended to be, and that was a channel for me to be able to talk about older movies that I wanted to talk about and to check out movies that I've never seen before. It was an excuse for me to see the movies that I've never seen before. And this is one of those rare occasions where I genuinely have not seen this movie before. I'm not somebody who's really overly keen on slasher movies in general, so the Friday the 13th franchise in general has just never really appealed to me. The only thing that I really knew about this franchise is a character called Jason, and I think that is probably the one thing that most people are familiar with when it comes to Friday the 13th. Might not necessarily know who the character is, but they definitely do recognise the costume and that hockey mask. But with Friday the 13th actually happening within Halloween season this year, and it won't be happening again until 2028, I thought, you know what? Let's give it a go. So I went into this movie not knowing anything about it, no real expectations whatsoever, and I tried to keep as much of an open mind as I could. And I've got to admit, this was much better than I thought it was going to be. The story for this movie follows the age-old cliches of a group of teens or counsellors. To be honest, I didn't even know they were supposed to be counsellors. Anyway, a group of people go to stay at a cabin in the woods, and all seems fine and dandy until they begin to be stalked and picked off one by one by a mysterious killer. It is a very simple premise that doesn't try to be anything more than it needs to be, and that is a straight up slasher movie. There is a smidge more going on in this though, but it's saved more for the final act, and without going into spoilers, it did surprise me. I do need to very quickly say that I will be trying to keep this review as spoiler free as possible. I went into this movie not knowing anything about it, and I think that actually did help my enjoyment of this movie overall. So I don't want to ruin it for anyone who has not seen this film. But there is something very big about this movie that I do want to address. So I think what I'll do is I'll save that for after my rating. So up until I give my rating for this movie, this will be spoiler free. But I'll make sure to give you a heads up before I get into any spoiler content. So for the time being, spoiler free. So like a lot of slasher movies, this is a movie that does follow a lot of the age-old cliches. It features a cabin in the woods, it features a group of friends going to summer camp, it features the weird old guy trying to warn them all that they're all doomed. And the characters do have to follow those rules that you need to follow in order to survive a horror movie. Number one, you don't split up, and number two, you don't do the deed. So it is a movie that is predictable in those regards, but as I said, it did surprise me in a few areas, and I will say for a movie that came out over 40 years ago, it did manage to subvert my expectations. I think the majority of people going into this movie, including myself, will have a lot of expectations surrounding what it is that will happen within the movie and how the story will unfold. So I really do appreciate that this is a movie that does do stuff that you won't be expecting. And one of the things that I wasn't expecting was Kevin Bacon. I had absolutely no idea that he was in this movie, so when he actually showed up, there was a moment where I saw him and I went, that kind of looks like Kevin Bacon. It is Kevin Bacon. There is a handful of other characters in this, with performances from Adrian King, Janine Taylor, Harry Crosby, Laurie Bartram, Mark Nelson and Peter Brower. The characters as depicted in this film are okay overall. I don't think that there's really anything special about these characters, but I do like how they are integrated into the story, and I think that every single character does fulfill their role in a suitable way. But I don't think that there's any real standouts for me. Ned is a bit of a weird one. Just had to put that out there. The performances from everyone in this movie are not bad at all, and I do think that everyone does bring a lot of believability to their roles. This is not a movie that really prioritises the characters. To me, this is a movie that prioritises tension and building up that tension and suspense until the final confrontation, and that is something that this movie does do really well. It is a slow building movie that does take its time to establish the characters and the setting and gradually builds up the suspense. I do partially feel like the location that this movie is set in really does help this. To be honest, during the day sequences, it actually does look like a nice place with some really nice scenery, but when it turns to night time, it does become a lot spookier. And very wisely, they do play around with shadows a bit throughout this, and some of the visuals can be pretty good, where you might see a silhouette in the background of the killer or a shot of one of the characters walking through the trees in a bright yellow coat, but the rest of the frame is so dark that you don't know if something is hiding there or not. I will admit there are a couple moments in this movie where I do think that visually it does look a little bit too dark, so I think that maybe if they just sort of brightened those scenes up a little bit, I think that it would have looked a little bit better. But outside of that, there are so many scenes throughout this movie where you do start to wonder if something will happen, and this trick is used very well. The worst and most suspenseful scene for me, without spoiling what happens in it, is a scene that involves a kitchen. And good God, you can cut the tension with a knife. For the most part, it is kept very quiet with no music in the background or anything. The only thing that you can hear beyond anything else is the sound of a kettle boiling, and the camera movements that they use throughout this scene with the way that it just slowly zooms in on the potential victim. It is expertly done, and it really set me on edge. There are so many scenes and shots featured in this movie that really will do the same for you, including the way they utilise POV shots from the killer's perspective, because the way it's done is actually quite clever and manages to trick you into guessing whether it actually is a POV shot, or if the cinematographer just thought it was a nice shot. It's actually quite similar to the movie Halloween in those regards, because that movie does use a lot of POV shots from the perspective of Michael Myers. And I will say there are a few other slasher horror movies that did help inspire this, or at least you will think of when you do watch this. The biggest one for me is probably Alfred Hitchcock's movie Psycho, which this movie does borrow a couple of things from, especially early on when they introduce a character called Annie, played by Robbie Morgan, and the surprising direction that they go with her. I also think that Psycho might have had a bit of an influence over the soundtrack for this movie, or at least part of it, because there are moments in this soundtrack that do feel very reminiscent of that iconic theme. Even the main theme from Jaws might have had an influence over this now that I'm thinking about it. You know, the soundtrack for this movie, now that I've brought it up, is actually pretty good overall. It's nothing too special, but I do think that composer Harry Manfredini has actually created the right sort of atmosphere for this soundtrack with a really simple and tense score. I do need to admit that whenever the main theme of this movie starts playing, whenever the killer is seeing people and you hear that little theme in the background, it kind of sounds like a train pulling away. Anyway, what I will say though, going back to this movie taking its time to build things up, I do think that there are times where it does take things maybe a little bit too slow. And I'll be honest, I can see that maybe putting a few people off. I do understand this, and I do get it if somebody said they didn't like this movie because it was too slow. But I'll be honest, for me, it worked alright, and in many ways it did feel quite similar to what Ridley Scott did with the first Alien. That said though, I do think that when it comes to rewatching this movie, the movie's rewatchability, I don't think that this movie would benefit from repeat viewings. Now, I've only seen this film once, so I can't say from experience, but there are a lot of scenes in this where nothing happens and they kind of feel a bit pointless because they don't add anything or do anything to further the story. They are effective and work well for first-time viewers because you have no idea what's about to happen. But for anyone rewatching this, it definitely won't have the same impact and could be seen as a little boring. Now, obviously, this movie being a horror movie, being a slasher movie, it does feature its fair share of jump scares, and I was a little bit worried about what it was that they were going to do with them because a lot of movies like this tend to kind of use them just to kind of liven things up. I don't think that any of the jump scares in this ever feel forced, and I think that they are used very well. They're mostly saved for when the killings begin, when there's an actual threat around, which I really do appreciate, as I've never really liked those fake jump scares that most modern horror movies tend to include. And I'll be honest, I think I'm actually developing a slightly thicker skin when it comes to these kind of horror movies because, I'll be honest, none of the jump scares actually got me. There was one that got close, but that was it. But that's not me saying that they aren't good. I genuinely think they are. Some of them are genuinely hard to see coming, and I would even go so far as to say that some of them can be quite creative. I do also want to briefly mention the effects work that has gone into making this movie because it does feature a lot of practical makeup and prosthetics. And because of this, it does help ground this movie pretty well, so for its time, it does look okay. This is a movie that did come out in 1980, so it is pretty much a given that eventually it will start to look and feel a little bit dated. And I'll be honest, when I was watching this, I did get that. And I will admit that there are a few scenes in this movie that are meant to be tense. They are meant to be really intense, scary sequences. And I found them a little bit unintentionally funny. But in all honesty, it didn't bother me too much, and I really did like this movie for what it is. Overall, this is a pretty simple but effective slasher movie that subverts expectations. It's got a good cast with a nice location, some interesting visuals, and an alright soundtrack. It is dated, absolutely, with some unintentionally funny moments, and it will definitely be a bit slow for some people, especially early on. But there is a good build-up of tension and suspense, and the movie does become more livelier towards the second half. off. If you haven't seen this movie before, I do think it is worth a look. I don't think it'll be for everyone, and as I said, I don't think it's the most rewatchable film, but for a one-off viewing, I do think it is really good. If you enjoy horror movies, if you enjoy slasher films, if you're generally curious about this, or if you're looking for something to watch over Halloween, I think you'll both enjoy and be surprised by this. It isn't fantastic, but it was much better than I thought it would be. So with all that being said, my rating for Friday the 13th is a 7 out of 10. Now, I did say earlier that I was going to address one big thing about this movie, and I'm going to do that in a few seconds. So this right now is your spoiler warning. If you have not seen Friday the 13th and you would like to, I'd advise you click away from this video now. I'll just give you a few seconds to click away if you need it. Still here? Okay. Well, let's get into it. So, going into this movie, I said that one of the only things that I really knew about this franchise was a character called Jason. And when I watched this movie, I was all set to see what it was that they were going to do with him. So you can imagine how shocked I was when I found out he's not even in this. I mean, there is a couple of flashes of him during a flashback and what appears to be a dream sequence, but Jason, the big scary guy in the hockey mask, the poster child for this entire series, the character that has gone toe-to-toe with Freddy Krueger, isn't even in this. It really did surprise me, and that's why I keep saying that this movie did subvert my expectations. The killer, as it turns out in this movie, is Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, played by Betty Palmer, and she is by far the most interesting and memorable character. She is over the top, and this to me is where the more unintentionally funny stuff happens, but she does provide a proper unpredictable threat. Betty's performance is really good. The way she acts as both the mum and Jason is a bit unnerving, and I really liked the twist. It doesn't completely make sense, and there's practically zero build up to it, and all of the characters do that really frustrating thing where they knock her down to the ground. They knock her out multiple times during the final act of this movie. She has weapons which get knocked out of her hand. Just pick them up. But apart from that, it is good overall. When she showed up, I was genuinely expecting her to be looking for Jason and he would appear right at the end as this big reveal, but I was pleasantly surprised by all this. And as you probably noticed when you clicked on this video, the thumbnail is wrong. I spent a good 15 minutes or so actually looking for pictures of Jason in this movie and the mask that he wears so that I could make sure that I got the right one for the thumbnail. And obviously I couldn't find anything and I got really confused. And then after I'd seen this movie and I realised he wasn't in it, I did debate changing the thumbnail to something a little bit different that would actually make a bit more sense within regards to what happens within this film, but I decided to leave it as is. There are going to be a lot of people like me who have never seen this movie before and will be expecting him to be in this movie, or they might recognise the mask and not know where it's from, so I decided to leave it as is. And I will say I am genuinely glad that I didn't have this spoiled for me, because I think I enjoyed it a lot more than I would have if I knew what the twist was. Coincidentally, Scream was on TV a few days ago and I had it on in the background. I've seen it before years ago, but I didn't remember everything about it, and luckily I had completely forgotten about that opening scene between Ghostface and Drew Barrymore, because they straight up spoil the end of this film. I'm so glad that I watched this before Scream came on, because I really would have been annoyed. I'll admit that's one of the reasons why I haven't watched movies like Psycho, even though I would love to. I mean, it is an absolute all-time classic and it is a how-to on how to build up suspense. But I've seen so many parodies of that movie in so many different things over the years that I know everything that happens in it. So just to reiterate, I am genuinely happy that I managed to avoid pretty much anything to do with this movie, and it really did surprise me. Horror movies, in my opinion, are much better if you do not know what the outcome is. I'm guessing Jason actually is in the sequel, so there is a bit of me that would like to see them purely out of curiosity, but I will admit I do have a friend who warned me that it all goes downhill from here, so I don't know if I'll visit those movies in the future, so we'll see. I'll leave it up to you guys. If you would like me to check out the sequels, let me know down in the comments. Well, I think that is pretty much everything I want to say for this video, so if you have watched this video, if you've stuck around all the way through to the end, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the notification button to keep up to date on everything that's going on here. If you have seen Friday the 13th, let me know down in the comments what you think about it, which movie in the franchise is your favourite, and as always, if you have any suggestions for any future Rewind reviews you would like me to do, let me know down below. I've still got a few surprises in store for Halloween season, so keep an eye out for updates. And let me tell you, the next one's going to be fun. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Rewind Reviews. Happy Halloween.